Our next speaker, we are delighted to have him. So, Jamie Turner runs a marketing consultancy and advisory group called 60. And it's a spinoff of BKV. So he's downstairs on our ninth floor. And Jamie is an internationally recognized speaker. So he just came back from a tour in Europe where I think he visited Barcelona and he was in Poland and some other places. And he's actually, I think, about to pack up and head back over there. So we all want Jamie's life. He is frequently appears on CNN. So he knows some folks over there, and they tend to call Jamie when they'd like some comments and some feedback on what's going on in the world of marketing. And he's written 2 books. So he's going to come up and talk about an area I love. It's kind of behavioral sciences. It's like, why do consumers do what they do? What makes you buy things? And he has a really neat presentation that killed in Barcelona or Poland or one of those places. So it's in Spanish. Hope that's okay. But it's in Polish as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie.
Awesome. Great. Thanks a lot. I'm going to leave that with you because I got this. Hey, how the hell y'all doing? All right? Excellent. That sounds terrific. I have promised Dave and the folks at BKV that I will not go longer than 4 hours for my little presentation here, so don't worry about it. We're going to have you out of here by 3 or 4 o'clock after I get finished with this. Just kidding. My name's Jamie Turner. What I love to do when I talk all over the globe about marketing and things like that is I'd rather have a conversation with you than do a presentation. So I'm going to ask that you interrupt me while we're talking so that we can address any questions you might have during the speech rather than waiting to the end. So I'm going to go a full 30 minutes. We're going to talk about things. Raise your hand, interrupt, challenge my assumptions, because sometimes people will say, well, that doesn't apply to me. In fact, I was doing this talk not too long ago. Actually, it was in Poland, and the person raised their hand and they said, the thing that you have up there, I don't agree with because I think things have changed since that, and actually removed that slide because it was basically a slide about the 14 words that generate the best response, free, all those things, free, all that kind of stuff. And her point as a millennial was, you know what, if I see something that says free or buy now or secret, inside secrets, whatever it is, it turns me off. And I realize that there is a generation that's coming through that's basically saying we want authenticity, we want genuineness, and we don't want to be sold to. So that's relevant because at the end of the presentation, I'm going to talk to you guys briefly about something called nonlinear marketing. It's a new concept that I'm working on a paper with Dr. Reshma Shah. We're going to get into the journal Brand Strategy with it, and it's basically talking about some of the stuff that we've talked about today. But before we do that, I do want to thank BKV. Let's seriously give them a big round of applause. I have run events like this, and it's a pain in the ass, trust me. And BKV, I looked at Dave about a month ago, and I was like, you don't look stressed enough, Dave. It's a month out. You're supposed to look stressed. He says, we got it locked and loaded. We got a great team in place. We're doing a great job. Everything's working out. So they've actually done such a fabulous job. And the fact that things are running so smoothly is an indicator of the attention to detail that BKV has in pretty much everything they do. So I want to get to know you guys a tiny bit. Raise your hand. The topic for today is why our brain buys stuff that we don't need. So raise your hand if you've ever made a purchase on something and then later said, why the hell did I buy that? Raise it. So 100%, right? We've all basically done that. And the whole reason for that is because our brain actually is triggered on certain things that make us behave in certain ways that we can't even really explain. Sometimes we don't even understand why we behave the way we do. But as marketers, it's our job to leverage those things so that we can sell more stuff. Because at the end of the day, our job is to sell more stuff. So let's talk about a couple of things. Here's what we're going to do. A couple introductions we've already done. We're also going to go into a little useful stuff there and then save plenty of time for the remainder of the presentation. Little background, I've written a couple of books. I get on TV sometimes. I have helped some clients you guys may have heard of. But the number one thing I love to do, and it doesn't matter where I do it, I love helping people because I'm a teacher at heart. And I love to see people go from point A to point Z. So hopefully at the end of this 30 minutes, you'll be able to go, all right, I can apply some of that stuff and maybe even use it to sell more stuff for your stuff. So let's talk about your customer's brain. One thing that we all have in common pretty much is that we all have customers, whether you're B2B, working on that side of the equation, whether you're B2C, it doesn't matter. The good news is B2C and B2B both have at their core human beings. And human beings, no matter where you are in the globe, all respond a certain way. They all respond to certain stimuli in the same way. So as Dave mentioned, I get to talk all over the place. I'm in Cairo, I'm doing this talk, and the thing that was relevant for them was the fact that we were sitting down and going, hey, guess what? Even though you're in Cairo, even though you're in Amsterdam, even though you're in Atlanta, even though you're in Mexico, you still are a human being, and at the bottom line is you really respond to things the same way. So let's talk about secret number one. People buy for emotional reasons and then rationalize their purchase with logic. So everybody in this room goes in, and for the most part, not 100% of the time, but for the most part, you're buying for emotional reasons, and then you're sitting back and going, hey, here's the logical reason why I did that. It's good news that we're a Porsche, because that is a great example of an emotional purchase, right? Is it not? I mean, true story. So average Porsche might cost $143,000. The average buyer looks like me, a man who's lost his hair, who might have a little bit of disposable income, right? And he goes, and I'm happily married, but he goes in, and it usually is a man, probably about 90% of the time. He goes in and he buys the Porsche. I don't have a Porsche. He buys the Porsche for $143,000. Now, you guys tell me, is that an emotional purchase or a logical purchase? Raise your hand if it's an emotional purchase, right? Okay, good, excellent. So what happens, though, is when the guy like me gets home and my wife says, what the are you doing buying a $143,000 car? You can be damn sure I've got a lot of logical reasons. Honey, it's got rack and pinion steering, it's got German engineering, it's got all this stuff. So the bottom line is we're all sitting around making these purchases and then rationalizing the purchase afterwards by saying, here's why I made that purchase, because otherwise I would feel pretty stupid for doing that. So secret number two, the brain is addicted to dopamine. Any runners in here? I'm a runner. Any runners? Yeah. So the high that you have after the run, and it's a subtle high, but it's a good high, is basically the dopamine that's kind of flowing around in your brain. Everybody in here who does yoga, everybody in here who does Pilates, everybody in here who does whatever you do to get that blood flowing is actually doing it because you respond to the dopamine. Now, unfortunately for me, the reason I run is because I also get a boost of dopamine when I eat, and that's true. No, I'm not kidding you, man. I swear, I have a buddy of mine who says, I don't have to eat. Eating doesn't, I mean, it's just I eat because it's fuel, but I don't get any pleasure from it. And I was like, what, are you kidding me? What do you mean you don't get pleasure from eating? And all of a sudden I started thinking, yeah, I get a lot of pleasure, you know. I get, at the end of a meal, I'm sitting there going, that was good, you know, and I can't wait for my mid-morning breakfast in an hour, you know. So there's a lot of that goes on. So I got to run in order to burn the calories off so that I can have the mid-morning breakfast. But the truth is the brain is addicted to dopamine. In fact, they did a study, this is kind of interesting, they did a study with rats, and they got rats into a cage, and they gave the rats a choice. One lever was a pellet of food, and the other lever was a dose of cocaine. And what is cocaine? You guys tell me, what does cocaine do? What chemical does it stimulate? We already talked about it. Dopamine, exactly, among a number of other chemicals. But the bottom line is, guess what happened to the rats? That they put in the cage and said, okay, here's a lever for food, here's a lever for cocaine. They starved to death. That's how powerful dopamine is that they sat there and hit the lever for cocaine, even though the food was over here, and they were going, Jamie'd be real happy because I'm really thin, you know, look at this, because I'm eating all this dopamine. But the truth is that they were dying because they starved to death, because that's how powerful dopamine is. Now, how do we as marketers use that little piece of information? The good news is that anytime you've got something that's new or a new version or whatever, it triggers a little dopamine in the mind of the consumer. So it's why, true story, it's why Steve Jobs could come out and go, hey, guess what? We have a new USB port on our Apple, and everybody stands up and they're like, oh God, that's amazing, that's wonderful, thank you so much. And the bottom line is, it was a new USB port. Now I just got to go buy stuff. But because Steve Jobs was saying it, and because he'd conditioned everybody out in the marketplace to say, hey, when Steve Jobs says there's a new USB port, we're going to go buy a new Apple, all of that kind of works. So that whole idea of using dopamine and using things like new versions and version 2.0 is a great way to kind of trigger this stuff. So another secret, people have subconscious reasons for preferring one brand over another. Now, everybody in here kind of knows that, but Baylor University did a blind taste test with Coca-Cola and Pepsi that kind of proved this, and it was really interesting. They went down, and the bottom line is they said, hey, we're going to get a room like this. It was just like this, 100 people in the room, and they did a blind taste study. Now, you guys, somebody holler out, what's a blind taste study? And you can tell us. Holler out, no wrong answers. What's a blind study? What does it mean? What does that mean, a blind taste study? Exactly, thank you very much. Was that George? Nope? Okay, George, just take credit for it. It's fine. George, who's heads up the BKV parent company, understands that it's a blind taste study. So a blind taste study is they go in, always, it's a marketer's thing. You take credit for things that you don't do, yeah. So the bottom line is they go in, they do a blind taste study, Coke, Pepsi, people don't know what they're drinking. They say, here's a styrofoam cup of Coke, but they don't say Coke, here's another styrofoam cup of a sparkling beverage, as Coke likes to call it. And they said, okay, now everybody vote on which one of the drinks you like better. Now, what do you think the reaction was? Go ahead. Coke, Pepsi, give me a split, like 60-40. RC Cola, there you go, Patrick, thank you very much. Give me, who said that? 50-50, what's your name? Tim. Tim did a great job. 50-50. It was exactly 50-50. So the bottom line is on a blind taste study, they go in and they say, hey, we want you to try these two things and see which one you like better. It came out half the room liked Coke, half the room liked Pepsi. So we already know that when you do a study like that, it's split 50-50. Now, guess what they did next? They go in and they say, okay, everybody clear off the styrofoam cups. We're going to put a Coke bottle in front of you. We're going to put a Pepsi bottle in front of you. And now we want you to taste it. And now we want you to tell us which one you like better. What do you think the results were there? Coke. What's the split? 3-1. It was 80-20. 80% liked Coca-Cola. When we already know that people can't really tell the difference. Now, my friend Greg is back here. His wife works for Coca-Cola. I'm sure Greg is back there going, I'm going to get home and call Jamie up and say, people do know the difference. But the bottom line is, in that room, they said they don't understand the difference. And yet, when they do know the brand, 80% of the time they said Coca-Cola. Now, what ended up happening here? The study highlighted the importance brand plays in purchasing behavior. Now, I know you guys already know this, but you guys tell me, what are the words that you associate with Coca-Cola? Go ahead, holler something out. Classic, happy, great, what? Refreshing, great. Real thing, great. Keep going. Smile, beautiful. How about polar bears, right? Santa Claus, right? Did anybody say Santa Claus? What would you say? Red? Yeah, absolutely. Now let's do the same thing for Pepsi. What are the words and images you associate with Pepsi? Michael Jackson, that always comes up. Was that Tim or no? Okay, cool. Michael Jackson, what did you say?
His hair on fire.
Hair on fire, exactly. Cindy Crawford. So you guys tell me which has more deep, meaningful impact on a subconscious level for us, Michael Jackson or Santa Claus? Right? I mean, it goes back to Santa Claus. Bottom line is Santa Claus goes very, very deep. But when the people reach for Coca-Cola and drink it and they say, I like the taste of Coke and the Coke bottle better, what they're really saying is, I like America, I like happiness, I like Santa Claus, I like to teach the world to sing. All of that stuff is what's going on. So these things are very, very deep. But if you interviewed people, and they did after the Baylor study, and they said, why'd you like the Coke better? They said, oh, because it tasted better. So a lot of times people don't know the reasons why they buy things, and that gets back to the core idea here, which is why your brain buys stuff it doesn't necessarily need is because of these subconscious things. So here's another secret about the brain. The female, now all the women in the room know this already, all the men are oblivious to it, but that's okay. The female brain has 25% more connections between the right and left hemispheres than the male brain. So what does the right hemisphere in your brain control? Who said that? Over here. Excellent, great creativity. What does the left hemisphere of your brain control? Logic, right, exactly, said the logical guy right here. So the bottom line is there's 25% more connections between the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere in the female brain than there are in the male brain. It's why women are better communicators. It's why women are better at multitasking. It's why women are better at intuition. They can walk into a meeting and they kind of know what's going on, and the men are just going, where's the cookies? And we're just kind of hanging out there. But the bottom line is women are going, all right, there's the power player, there's the person I got to convince, and they're doing all this, and the men, again, we're just kind of sitting here. So let's take a look at the female brain. So there's 25% more connections. It literally is why women are smarter than men, and that is honestly the truth. There's 25% more connections. That's an x-ray of the female brain. Let's take a look at the male brain. So, I mean, all the women, that chuckle you heard, guys, was a knowing chuckle. That's called, yeah, I knew that. I'm going to laugh just because he's sitting here and I got to make him happy. So the bottom line is women really are more intuitive and all that sort of stuff. And there's a physiological reason. It's not just because. It's because their brain is actually working better than ours. So here's a secret. As much as 95% of human thought happens in the subconscious mind. So consciously we're thinking thoughts and words and all that sort of stuff, but 95% of what we do happens subconsciously. Now I'm going to show you a picture up here. It's two pictures side by side, same picture, basically identical. I want you to look at it. And I want you to let me know which one is more attractive and appealing to you. And it's going to be the same picture. So I just want you to take a look at it. So let's take a look at this, okay, just for a second or two. See if there's one or the other. Don't overthink it, okay? How many people said the picture on the left was more attractive to you? The people in the audience. So on the left of the screen, thank you. Is that Michael? Well, good to see you again. So on the left-hand side of the screen, raise your hand. And on the right-hand side of the screen, raise your hand. So we had 90% of the room. I'm going to ask the guy behind the counter, how do I make this? Oh, it's go backwards is the go backwards button. I was going to ask him how to make this go backwards, and it's like right there. So on the left-hand side, what did we have? Left-hand side, only a handful, and the right-hand side, most people said. So here's what's interesting about this. I do this. This is the third time in a row I've done it, and the statistics ended up being the opposite of what they're supposed to be. So I'm going to walk you through what was supposed to happen, but I think I know why. I got to fix this slide. Why, for those of you who picked the one on the right, tell me why you thought the one on the right was more attractive. Yeah.
Less threatening.
Less threatening. Why?
Because the one on the left is more in your face.
Okay.
And the one on the right is back.
Okay, interesting. Less threatening. Any other reasons why the one on the right was more appealing?
His eyes are blue or it's brighter.
Okay, so that's exactly what happened the last time. So here's what's supposed to happen versus what actually happened. First of all, this is my college roommate. And so it pisses me off that he's that gorgeous. I'm going to show you some pictures of him in college because you're going to go, oh my God, he changed a lot. I still accuse him of having plastic surgery. He swears to God he didn't. But the bottom line is what's supposed to happen, and his eyes are so blue that people are attracted to the blueness. So the smaller pupils are on the right-hand side. Slightly larger is on the left-hand side. It actually makes the blue come out in his eyes. What was supposed to happen, and I got to fix the slide, is this. How many people in the room have been at a cocktail party and you've noticed that you're talking to somebody and there's a connection going on there, right? There's just a chemistry you have, and you don't exactly know why, but it's really, this woman's like going, oh yeah, So the bottom line is there's a reason for that, and the reason is when we are interested in something, our pupils dilate, they get larger to let more light in, to be able to examine what you're looking at. Subconsciously, you know that. So when somebody's talking to you and their pupils dilate and they like you, that's making you like them. And so what's going on is you're starting to have that chemistry that we're talking about is really something that's visual, and that visual stimuli makes you kind of feel a certain way about these people. So all of this goes on. I do have to fix this. The guy's eyes are too blue. But let me show you something about this that'll help you understand a couple of things about Davis. This is my college roommate, Davis. Davis, as I mentioned, was the guy on the left in college. Doesn't that suck that he got that good looking as he got older? I'm not kidding me. So I want to show you something here. I'm the one on the right. Does that not suck even worse? Yeah. I am not kidding you. We go hang out, and the women flock to him. I'm like, dude, 20 years ago, that was me. And something happened. And what he did, he lost a little bit of weight and all that sort of stuff. But look at this. The guy on the left, that's Davis. Does he not look like Hank Williams Jr.? I mean, seriously, I am not kidding you. That guy looks like Hank Williams Jr., and here's what he looks like today. It is just fucking not fair, right? It just pisses me off to no end. So the bottom line is that we have all these reasons why we are appealing and behaving the way we're behaving, and it all has to do with things like that are Davis is the salesperson, you know, that kind of stuff. So another secret, colors have meaning and can impact conversion rates. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because everybody in the room knows this. The color red, what does the color red mean? There's a cheat sheet up on the board for you in case you don't want to but yell out, what does color red mean? Danger, power, all that sort of stuff. Do you know why red submit buttons statistically, most of the time, not always, are better at getting a click than blue or green or anything like that? Because of the power of red. Red, it subconsciously means danger. Fire is red, blood is red, all that sort of stuff. So it attracts our eyes, and our eyes are actually set up to be more responsive to the color red. So we actually see red easier than we see other colors. So down at the bottom right-hand side of the computer screen, red submit button tends to work better. Now, I know I am at the product of BKV. One of the beautiful things about BKV, I used to go to Maribeth and I'd say, hey Maribeth, should I do this or that? And she said, you got to test your way to success because it won't matter what I say based on my gut. It matters what your customers say. And your customers may be different from my other customers. So you got to test your way to success. And that's one of the key themes that BKV keeps having come through on all the stuff they do. So if you take a look at logos and why logos are designed the certain colors the way they are, this is actually a slightly flawed chart because I saw a chart that did all logos and it did a spectrum. Almost all of them are red or blue. Red, of course, means power, energy, things like that. Blue means sophistication, stability. Purple, what does purple mean? Passion, true. What else? Royalty. You know why? Because in the Middle Ages, the color purple, the dye for purple, which came from lavender, was a very rare flower. And so only rich people could afford purple clothing. So the royalty would wear purple clothing as a way to differentiate themselves from other people. So here we are 700 years later, and we're still saying purple means royalty because it's just been passed down for hundreds and hundreds of years. Almost done wrapping around in the bend here. Another secret is people have hidden motivators behind their purchases. Now remember we talked about we buy emotionally and rationalize logically. Sometimes we buy stuff for these hidden reasons that go into. So I know everybody in this room has had a situation, whether you're admitting it or not, where you sit down and you go in and a salesperson comes up to you and they're selling you something. Maybe even have two people bidding on it. The bidding price is the same, cost is the same, everything is the same. Who are you going to go with? It's the person who subconsciously you're a little more attracted to. You know, whether you're married or not married, doesn't matter. Whether you're in a relationship or not in a relationship, you're going to gravitate to that person that you just have that connection with. And the bottom line is, we then go into our boss and they say, well, why did you select company A over company B? Is anybody going to say, because I thought they were hot? No, of course not. We're going to come up with all these logical reasons, which brings us full circle back to my college roommate who, if the guy on the left was selling you a copier versus the guy on the right selling you a copier, I can pretty much tell you right now, all things being similar except for who's selling it to you, the hidden motivator for you is going to be the guy on the right. Final one is social, and then we're going to talk about this concept called nonlinear marketing. Social media is often thought of as a customer acquisition tool, and it's actually better as a customer retention tool. Now, I wrote a book called How to Make Money with Social Media. Everybody comes up to me, they think so, not, you guys don't, but other people who are not as sophisticated go, oh, social media is my silver bullet. I'm going to have the intern do it for free, and then it's going to drive all these leads to our business. And the first thing I say is, I know the title of the book was How to Make Money with Social Media, but the bottom line is, you don't make money with social media as much as you really can preserve money. You get clients in, they justify their purchase by engaging with you on social media, but it's pretty rare that somebody says, hey, I'm following you on Twitter, so I'm going to buy your product. It's more like, I'm buying your product Therefore, I'm following you on Twitter. So keep that in mind as you move forward. So a couple of new concepts in the world of marketing. I'm writing a paper with Dr. Reshma Shah, who's the co-author of one of my books called How Brands Are Using Nonlinear Marketing to Address Changing Perspectives on Consumer Decision-Making Process. So here's what's going on. Everybody in this room has been following a linear model of the consumer decision-making process, when the reality is the consumer decision-making process is nonlinear. Here's what I mean by that. We've all been taught this, whether we were in college or in our profession. There's an awareness of a need, there's a knowledge of options, then we go to the liking of various brands, this kind of linear process. Then we have a preference for a brand, then we have conviction about the brand, and then we go ahead and we purchase the brand. So that's what we've been taught all along. But every single person in this room doesn't necessarily follow that linear path. Now what happened as marketers is that we're going in and we're saying, hey, guess what? We can address each one of these things. We can do radio to build awareness. We can do newspaper when they start zeroing in on what their options are. We can do magazines, and there's a sales funnel approach. We can then get store visits and point of purchase, and then we'll have social media to confirm their purchase afterwards, all of that stuff. But the reality is that you take a look at this, and I know you guys will agree with this. The bottom line is sometimes we get an awareness of a need, then we make the purchase, then we notice the other brands, then we come up with the options and all that sort of stuff. Or we might go in and we might say, hey, I'm going to start by liking various brands, and I'm going to have knowledge of options. So the truth is that it's not a linear process that we make purchases on. It's a nonlinear, more amorphous, more organic process. Or we might even go where we make the purchase first. Every single person in this room has been at the cash register and gone, oh, I need a York peppermint patty. You know, I've never heard of a York peppermint patty. Who hasn't? But the bottom line is we've made purchases and then rationalized it afterward with that process. So that brings up a whole thing, which is, wow, if people don't go down a linear path when they make purchases, how the hell am I going to talk to them in the appropriate way? Well, there's a solution for that. Traditional consumer behavior models don't accurately portray the nonlinear path to the purchase. To make matters worse, though, just when you thought it was already screwed up enough already, traditional media consumption habits have been tossed out the window. So we've talked about this a little bit earlier today, and it was really good stuff. Bottom line is, look at that. That bottom line there, that people 18 to 24 have left watching TV. From 2012 to 2016, it's down 30%. Dave and I, where's Dave? Dave right over here. By the way, how am I doing on time? Just out of curiosity. Okay, fine. Okay, on a roll, great. Good. Okay, so I got to round the bend here. But the bottom line is, Dave and I were talking last night with some of the folks at dinner, and we were saying, you know, my experience was I've got a 15-year-old daughter. You're nodding your head because you know where I'm going with this. Got a 15-year-old daughter, and I'm like, hey, Lily, how much TV do you watch during a week? And she's like, you know, after I get past the snarl, she says, I don't watch TV, Dad. And I said, oh, no, honey, it's fine. I'm okay. I mean, it's me. Mom's in the other room. But how much TV do you watch during the week? And she says, Dad, I really don't watch TV. Like, what do you mean you don't watch TV? She says, I watch zero TV. I don't know how much clearer I need to be, Dad. You know, and all of a sudden it's coming home. And I'm like, oh, my God, there's this entire generation that's not watching TV. And by the way, here's something else, a little statistic about millennials, slightly older than my daughter. Speaking of changing not only media consumption habits, but just changing consumer behavior, only 1 out of 5 millennials has had a Big Mac. Holy, you fill in the blanks there. Only 1 out of 5 millennials has had a Big Mac. I mean, every single person in this room over the age of 30 has had gazillions of Big Macs, unless you're a vegetarian or something like that. Only 1 out of 5. And I do that, and nothing against McDonald's, but you know, we're on the family vacation. Hey kids, where do you want to go? There's a McDonald's. And they're like, no McDonald's. All right, well, let's do the, you know, Burger King. No, they'll do Subway, they'll do Chick-fil-A, because they feel like it's healthier, even though, is it healthier? I don't know. So the bottom line is there's this massive change in what's going on from a consumer basis. So nonlinear marketing is basically saying that the brand needs to weave itself into the life of the consumer in order to create preference. Since we can't target them. In the old days, what would happen is we would go in and we would say, hey, guess what? You're watching TV. I'm going to interrupt you for 30 seconds. You don't want to talk to me, but I'm going to talk to you whether you like it or not, and then I'm going to go away. And guess what? Half the time you're taking a pee, so you didn't see the commercial anyway. The other half of the time, it's not a product I'm interested in. And for those who are interested in it, it's like, oh my God, here they are interrupting me with this. So it's this interruptive, traditional, linear approach to interrupt you. What's happening is that brands are starting to go in and say, we have to become part of your life on an ongoing basis, and this gets to that kind of personalized targeting stuff that we were talking about. Since the consumer decision-making process is nonlinear and since media consumption habits have been disrupted, the only way brands of the future will be able to drive preferences through nonlinear marketing. With traditional marketing, brands sell a product by interrupting a consumer's life. You're watching TV, I want to interrupt you for 30 seconds. Thank you very much, I'm going to go away now. That is changing. That's going to change dramatically over the next couple of years. Of course, and it already is. With nonlinear marketing, the brand weaves itself into the fabric of a consumer's life in order to become part of their existence. In addition, the brand asks the consumer to participate in its life as a way to deepen its relationship with the consumer and drive future purposes. So the brand gets involved with the consumer's life. It asks the consumer to be involved with the brand. Here's how that works. You think about Red Bull. Red Bull said, hey, guess what? We're going to do air races as a way to engage people. You think about Starbucks. They don't do advertising, but they said our entire retail environment is the bottom line, our entire retail environment is our selling tool, and so that's how they do it. So here's a recap of everything we've talked about today. Traditional models of consumer behavior don't reflect reality. Media consumption habits have been disrupted and scattered. The old way of doing things, interrupting a consumer's life with a sales message, isn't really working anymore. So marketers are looking for new ways to drive conversions. And as a result, nonlinear marketing, which is when a brand weaves itself into the fabric of a consumer's life instead of interrupting it, is how marketers are going to do this moving forward. So keep that term in your mind as you move forward. If you want to Google nonlinear marketing or what is nonlinear marketing, you'll see one of my blog posts on it right up there at the top. Check it out. It's a new concept to describe what you, Krista, at Spanx, and what any of the other clients here are already doing, which is how do we weave our brand into the fabric of a consumer's life so we create preference and then get them to convert that way. So it's already happening, but we're starting to call it nonlinear marketing as a way to describe it. Thank you guys very much. My name is Jamie Turner, and I appreciate you listening. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you,
That
man.
was great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So we have time for a couple quick questions. Does anybody have?
Cool. Rule number one, no hard questions, only softballs. So let's go with you.
So my background is actually, neurology.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
You're the only one in the room.
Yeah, that's right. We can assure you of that.
The left brain, right brain thing has been disproved a lot.
No, what? Tell us about it. Seriously, go. I'm fascinated. What do you mean it's been disproved?
So, when you're talking about, your creative processes, let's take like music as a function, right? You'd assume that's a very left brain process and you're trying to think of things intuitively and creatively. A lot of those, disparate brain functions are actually on both sides of the brain.
Yeah.
Same thing with language. Same thing with when you're trying to come up with a storyline for a play or something.
Yeah.
Also, when you're talking about gender differences, which is really fascinating, it actually varies by where culturally where you're from. So, for instance, in our society, when we have men play with video games,
yeah,
and women, traditionally, right, if you're playing with each other and dolls and whatnot, right, you see that men are better at spatial recognition and like manipulating 3D objects, whereas women are better communicators.
Right.
But if you take if you remove those activities from their birth, and you look at women who did grow up playing video games, they had the same level of 3D spatial abilities that a man typically would. So I would challenge you to think about the cultural impact that plays out in gender differences rather than the basic neurology of it.
Love it. Fascinating. Let's talk more because I want to learn more about what where you are on that. And I'm going to bow to a neurologist.
I'm not a neurologist. I just studied.
All right, but you play one on TV. But I'm going to bow to your expertise. So I would love afterwards to chat about that. And I would challenge something. When I was about your age, the big thing was, hey, The only reason girls play with dolls and boys play with trucks is because we've been conditioned to that. And for about a year, they went, all right, well, let's swap it around and see what happens. And the bottom line is the girls wanted the dolls and the boys wanted the trucks. So there is, I bow to your greatness, seriously, and I want to learn more. But I also would suggest that sometimes culturally, where it's politically incorrect to say there are differences between men and women, you know, we can agree that there are real sort of ingrained and built-in differences. But let's keep the dialogue going. And by the way, if anybody wants to join, what's your name?
Adam.
Adam. Love the fact that you challenged the thinking. I'm going to make some course corrections on it, so thank you very much for doing that. I really do appreciate it. And let's keep the dialogue going. Yeah.
You mentioned social media and how it's not really a device for driving a purchase, really more for attention. How would you consider then things like reviews and feedback on Google, Amazon, Yelp, what have you? People use that data, on whether they make that purchase event. So where does that fit in?
I honestly, you could argue that that's social media because it's online information sharing. And technically that would be, but I do consider online reviews as a separate thing. So you could lump them into social media and then it sort of disproves it. But I honestly, they are important to your point, and people do judge things based on that. And what they're looking for, of course, is not 1 or 2 reviews, but a pattern in multiple reviews. If the majority are negative or the majority are positive. And they also filter it where it's like a restaurant, I know 80% of the time it's going to be somebody complaining about the cold soup they got. And that's fine. I take that into consideration. So point number 1 is they are very powerful. And point number 2 is I'm not putting reviews, online reviews, into the social media bucket. But thanks, great question. Let's do one last one.
One more?
Oh, yeah. Who? We had one in here in the middle? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
John.
I'm John.
John, I just want to do a quick shout out. John is the founder and CEO of Atom Software. Remember Atom Software? Took it public, sold it, the whole 9 yards. So he's a brilliant man. And if you got a chance to chat with him, feel free to do so. Yeah, John,
Well, I
fire
was
away.
hesitant to follow a neurologist because my question is way simpler than
Yeah, good.
And I fall in that demographic of the 50 to 65-year-old white guy who watches more TV.
Yeah.
And but mainly sports. And when you talk about the companies that traditionally ask us to take a 30-second break and watch the Budweiser ad or the Coke ad or the Geico ad or whatever, the rights fees for, Super Bowls and all these things keep going up and up and up. So are sports sort of an outlier to the rest of the industry and TV in general?
In terms of consistently, no. In fact, I think, and somebody in media, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what they're starting to see, right, isn't sports is trailing off because people don't have the attention span. Is that what's going on, Bree?
Yeah, I mean, look at ESPN just laid off a ton of people.
Yeah. Yep, so what's going on is, you identified, hey, I'm an older white guy and I love sports, yes. But the younger people, it's why also playing golf is starting to trail off because younger people are like, I don't have 4 hours. I got kids to feed and all that sort of stuff, so they're starting to do it. So fascinating stuff. Great question, John. Bree, who is the executive media director at BKV, one of the very smartest people I know in media. If you get a chance to chat with her, please do so. Thank you guys very much. I really do appreciate it. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.